Welcome aboard, everybody. Sports Talk Nation. Mike Cohen here with you. And again, hope everyone had a great Christmas as we now move into the New Year's week. And we have some big breaking news, of course, that broke earlier this afternoon. And that is that Jets quarterback Mike White is cleared to play. He will indeed start on Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks. Let's talk about it. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, again, huge news today for the New York Jets, for the New York Jets fan, for the team that lost on Thursday night in disparaging fashion to the Jacksonville Jaguars 19-3. Everyone thought the season was over, but then the Jets got a little glimmer of hope over the Christmas holiday. Dolphins losing to Green Bay, with New England losing to Cincinnati, even with the Raiders apparently losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Eve night. All those things help put the Jets in a position where if they win out, and if the New England Patriots should lose to either one of their final two games, either to Miami or Buffalo, the Jets could find themselves in the playoffs, believe it or not. And thankfully for the Jets, they won't have to see, at least for Jet fans anyway, won't have to see Zach Wilson, who will now be inactive, it sounds like, for the rest of the year, as Mike White will now be the quarterback moving forward. This from Rich Zamini as he clarifies the comments from Robert Saleh, who spoke this afternoon, saying that Mike White is now the starter for the remainder of the year. No more week-to-week nonsense. Joe Flacco is number 2. Zach Wilson is inactive. His season is all over, barring any injury to either White or Flacco. So there you go. Now this also comes off the heels of the report by Jay Glazer on Christmas Day that the Jets would be willing to consider moving past Zach Wilson at the end of this season. So this is huge news, and this is a huge opportunity, not just for the Jets to get into the playoffs, because that's obvious. This team, of course, hasn't been to the playoffs in over 11 years. It would be huge for them to find a way to win their last 2 games at Seattle in a building where they haven't won ever. They haven't won in Seattle since 1997 when the Kingdom was still up. And to go down to Miami and to beat a struggling, on the skids Miami Dolphins team that lost a heartbreaker yesterday to the Green Bay Packers. It would be an amazing story for the Jets to get into the playoffs this year to begin with. And to do that with Mike White as their quarterback, who would really give himself an opportunity to prove that he is indeed the man that he needs to be, quarterback number 1 going into next season. So this is in a lot of ways an audition for him to show that, yes, he is not only a guy who can be a starter in this league, but to be the Jets guy moving forward. He is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. It is also the signal that the Zach Wilson era, or however you want to pronounce it, is indeed coming to an end. So that's where we are right now with the Jets. It is going fast and furious. Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas, of course, I'm sure is very much involved in this decision-making. Jets making a decision very quickly. They get Mike White a re-examination on his ribs. Maybe they found that 11th doctor, and he has been cleared to play in this game. And that is going to change a lot of things for the Jets, because the last couple of weeks, not only have we seen Zach Wilson struggle at times, especially in the Jacksonville game, but really this team has played vanilla kind of football. I mean, they just look like a team that just didn't have the kind of pep in their step, if you will, that they did in the 3 games that Mike White started. I think it's a good thing for the Jets. Mike White played well in those 3 games that he got opportunity to start this year. This Jet offense moved the football. They scored some points. Yes, they only won 1 game against Chicago. I totally understand that. And they were very close to beating Minnesota. But still, they were in 1-score games against 2 of the top teams in this league. The 2 games he lost. He gives this team a much better chance to win than anybody else does on that at the quarterback on this roster. And this team loves playing with the guy. Everyone keeps saying it. We all see it. This team has renewed energy when Mike White is playing, and I cannot wait to see how this Jet team comes out against Seattle, against the Seahawks team that's been reeling a little bit of late, and against Geno Smith, who has been playing as well as he did earlier in the year. That's going to be a fascinating game. Even for Geno Smith, it's the revenge game for him against his old football team. So, big game. Big game coming up on Sunday in Seattle between the Jets and the Seahawks. If the Jets win their last 2 games, they have a great chance. They have a very good chance of getting to the playoffs if they get some help. Now, they need New England to lose. So that also makes another game that takes place in Week 17 very fast, very interesting. And that's Buffalo at Cincinnati. Why does that matter? Well, right now, both Buffalo and Cincinnati are 1-2 in the AFC. Both of those teams have wins over the Kansas City Chiefs. So, in essence, that game is really a battle, potentially, for a top seed in the AFC. If Cincinnati were to win that game, they would then have the edge over the Buffalo Bills moving forward for the rest of the year. And, of course, Kansas City is going to want to feel motivated at that point to win out as well in order to have a chance at the number 1 seed. So you have 3 teams all vying for the number 1 seed in the AFC. What is the situation? Let's just play this out. Let's just say, forget what Kansas City does. Let's just say Buffalo goes out there and beats Cincinnati. It's going to create a very interesting scenario going into Week 18 where Buffalo may or may not need to have that game against New England. So if you are the Jets, it's obviously a tough situation that you put yourselves in. But it's going to be, I'm really curious to see how Buffalo is going to play that in Week 18, depending on what happens between them and the Bengals in Week 17. If the Bills lose, I would imagine that the Bills are going to go all out against New England. If the Bills win, I'm very curious to see how it plays out. Now, of course, there are scenarios where the Bills may have to go out there and win that game against New England just to keep Kansas City away from the number 1 seed. That's also out there. So you have 3 teams again vying for the number 1 seed: Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. And that also affects the Jets, as I said, with that Bills-Cincinnati game that comes up. And, of course, the Bills play the Patriots. And if the Patriots win out, they take the number 7 seed in the wild card. And it doesn't matter what the Jets do, the Jets would essentially be out even if they do sweep those 2 games. So I know it's a little bit complicated to explain right there, but that's basically the scenario coming out of the AFC. And that's the predicament the Jets find themselves in. That's why those 2 losses to New England really, really hurt the Jets this year. Now, just quickly over here to the NFC, not very complicated for the Giants because really all they have to do is win one of their next 2 games. They play the Colts, the miserable Indianapolis Colts, on Sunday, so you would have to figure the Giants win that game against the Colts. That's it. They have it wrapped up as a wild card. And we're talking about the Giants potentially going to San Francisco to play the 49ers and Brock Purdy in what will be a fascinating wild card game. The Giants will certainly show that they are a playoff-ready team. They gave the Minnesota Vikings. Look, everyone's giving the Minnesota Vikings everything they can handle this year. The Vikings are like 11-0 in one-score games this year. They've pulled numerous games out of their you-know-what this year, including a game against the Jets and now the Giants. But the Giants played well. Saquon Barkley had that big touchdown run. Daniel Jones, yes, there were moments in that game, middle of the game, fourth quarter, where the Giants made a lot of mistakes, a lot of drop passes. The big interception thrown by Daniel Jones that really cost the Giants an opportunity to maybe roll a little bit easier in that fourth quarter against Minnesota. They still fought back, came back, tied the game. They showed you they're a playoff-tested team. Isaiah Hodgins showed you he could be the number 1 receiver or potential number 1 receiver here for the Giants, but either way, it was a nice test for Big Blue. They're going to most likely get to the playoffs unless they have a complete total collapse here, which no one sees right now. But they have, of the 2 New York teams, the easiest road to get to the playoffs. Just beat the Colts, the miserable Indianapolis Colts, and the New York Giants are in the playoffs. So playoff football is here, folks. It's getting very interesting here with these scenarios. For the Jets, again, Mike White is back under center, and all the Jets have to do is win both games and get a little bit of help. And we'll see what that can happen here. A little bit of not just a late Christmas miracle, maybe even a little bit of a 2023 New Year's miracle for that matter as well. Like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts below. How do you feel about Mike White getting back under center for this football team? We will talk to you next time.